Once World War II came to an end, the decision had to be made about what to do with the nation of Germany. This is going to represent Germany. Now, following the war, Germany was divided into 4 zones that would be controlled by 4 major powers in the world. Now, these zones weren't equal, but again, they were divided into 4 zones. One zone will be controlled by the British, one zone will be controlled by the French, one zone would be controlled by the the United States of America, and the other would be controlled by the Soviet Union. Now, the British, the French, and the Americans all decided to combine their zones together to form a new country. This new country will be known as West Germany. The Soviet-controlled zone will be known as East Germany. Now, West Germany is a Western democracy. West Germany is receiving Marshall Plan money. West Germany is rebuilding very quickly. They're getting money for medicine, for infrastructure, for investment. They're getting capital. They're getting supplies to rebuild. And so West Germany is getting back on their feet very, very quickly. The Soviets would not allow Iron Curtain nations to receive Marshall Plan money. Therefore, East Germany is not rebuilding very quickly. East Germany is struggling. Their infrastructure is not back intact, and so they're really having a hard time getting back up on their feet following World War II. Now, the next question to be dealt with is what to do with the former capital of the old German nation, and that capital is Berlin. Now, Berlin, let's move this over here. The same approach was also taken with the city of Berlin as it was with Germany as a whole. Berlin was going to be divided into 4 zones. Again, those 4 zones would be controlled by the British, the French, the Americans, and the Soviet Union. Now, once again, the British, the French, and the Americans all decided to combine their zones and form a new democratic capitalistic city called West Berlin. The Soviet-controlled area will be known as East Berlin. Now, West Berlin is a Western democracy. West Berlin receives Marshall Plan money, just like West Germany. West Berlin will receive medicines, supplies, construction supplies. They will receive money for investment. They will receive capital. Their infrastructure, like I said, will be quickly rebuilt. Literally, on the other side of the street, in East Berlin, people are starving. They're not rebuilding. Their homes are in shambles. The infrastructure is not rebuilt. The roads are destroyed. Water lines are destroyed. There's no power lines in some cases. And so literally, on the other side of the tracks, people are struggling in East Berlin. It was the goal of the United States to make West Berlin this shining beacon of democracy. They wanted to stick this thing right in the backyard, actually right in the front yard of the Soviet Union, and show the Soviets that we can do whatever we want to do, and that this is how good democracy is. It's so good that we're going to put democracy in a city that is completely inside an Iron Curtain nation. Now, the Soviets were not happy with all of the supplies that were being driven in there, and the Soviets were even more embarrassed by the fact that people were fleeing out of East Berlin into West Berlin on a very regular basis. It was a huge embarrassment for the Soviets. So to prevent these people from fleeing, the Soviets are going to build a wall. It's called the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall is literally the icon of the Cold War era. It is a divider between East and West. The Great Wall is the Berlin Wall is a lecture topic for another day. But this thing took on a life of its own. It started out as a couple roadblocks, some sawhorses, some guards, barbed wire. And it's going to morph into, in some cases, a 20-foot tall, 6-foot wide concrete barrier with sniper's nests. It's going to have booby traps. It's going to have barbed wire, bombs. There's all kinds of things that will be on the Berlin Wall to prevent people from escaping from the east to the west. Now, the Soviets will tell you it was put up to keep people from West Berlin from coming into East Berlin, but that really was not the case. Now, the way that all of the supplies got from West Germany to East Germany were through highways that were running into the city. Now, to prevent this embarrassment from going on, to prevent West Berlin from becoming this shining beacon of democracy, the Soviets thought it would be in their best interest to go ahead and blockade these highways, put tanks, guards, knowing that the United States and the rest of Western Europe would not want to run these blockades, because if they ran the blockades, then they're going to instigate World War III. And that was the thing of the Cold War era, is nobody wanted to be the person to instigate the next World War. So knowing full well that the Americans would not dare attack the roadblocks, the Soviets put it up as kind of drawing a line in the sand, a game of chicken. Cross this line if you want to and see what happens. So the United States decided that they weren't going to cross that line. They weren't going to instigate a war. So the Kennedy administration and the rest of the United States government got creative on things. They figured, well, if we can't drive the supplies into West Berlin, then we're going to fly the supplies into West Berlin. And this is going to be something that's going to be known as the Berlin Airlift. One of the greatest humanitarian efforts of all time. The Soviets are literally trying to starve the people in West Berlin into submission by refusing to allow any supplies to come into them. And so the United States decides, well, if we can't drive it there, we're going to fly it there. And so during the Berlin Air Campaign, a plane is going to land every 3 minutes for 11 months in West Berlin. Now, these aren't little puddle jumper planes. These are big cargo planes that are full of all kinds of supplies and food and supplies to send to West Berlin. And again, the goal was to make West Berlin this shining beacon of democracy, and an embarrassment for the Soviet Union to have this located in an Iron Curtain nation. This will be the hot spot for the Cold War in Europe, and as we're going to take a look at later on, the hot spot for the Cold War on our side of the pond is going to be this little place called Cuba.